Mhm.
So Sherry's got just the phone that she's talking into. So we're going to see in playback if there's an echo or anything like that. So if there is, in comments, just let us know there's no one on. So they would have to see this from the very beginning. So whatever. Hi. Hi,
Hi,
Sherry.
how are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad you jumped on the
Me
Shields tour
too.
last night and we got a chance to meet and talk. And I saw your page and I know that you've done a couple of videos that were completely raw, unedited, and it seems like that's really what people want these days. They really, really, we're missing that from each other. Even neurotypicals are like, and you know how if you've ever gotten into a conversation and it's the surface, like you said, it's shallow, it's surfacey small talk, and then
Mm-hmm.
you start to dive deep and they're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm kind of thinking that they're sort of like, give me some of that ooey gooey deep and
yeah.
real, you know?
I've got
That
authentic.
say what?
I've got authentic.
I want to
I
hear about your journey. Tell us how you came your diagnostic journey. Like how did you learn that you're on the spectrum of some the neurodivergent? You said you're ADHD, but
yeah.
kind of maybe think you're also is it called ADHD?
ADHD, I think if you have both, I'm questioning right now. I actually don't know yet. And but I do have ADHD. I am an ADHD adult. I was diagnosed around 25. I'm
Mm,
49. Gen Xer. So it really was a different time when I was diagnosed. And growing up, and you're a similar age to me, growing up in the 80s and then high school in the 90s, they didn't know about these things. So I went through all of that, not even knowing um, I had some kind of learning disability. And it wasn't until my senior year, actually, that one of the teachers decided to pull me aside and thought I might have a learning disability. And I got tested, but still, I don't think they knew anything about ADHD, and I wasn't diagnosed with anything. He just noticed that in my records, consistent difficulties in certain subjects. And I felt like I was crazy. After school, when I would go to babysit, I would get a little bit of time at the house before those kids would come home. And no matter how much I would try to read the homework,
mm,
I could not focus to save my life. And even since I was little, they would try to put me in gifted classes because I was really smart. But I couldn't understand why I had trouble with some things that are considered basics. So it was very, very confusing for me. And of course, the people back then helped the best way they knew how. And all they could think of is, well, you're really smart. You just need to apply yourself. And
mm,
I just kept
oof.
trying, and it was making me feel absolutely crazy. And even when I got into my 20s and I was having trouble, when I went back to college, and I couldn't understand why that was suddenly like really hard because it wasn't structured, the way high school is, where they actually break down the larger assignments into smaller ones for you. And you go to college and they're like, read these 3 chapters and we'll have a test next month. And you're like, okay. So you don't think to give yourself homework assignments, and the executive functioning issues of
Mm.
time management, prioritizing, that's not there. So you're like, yeah, I'll do it. And you can't keep up. And eventually, I basically kept cutting my classes down one by one. Excuse me. Mm, Thinking that maybe I'm not ready for college. I don't know what I'm doing. I always had this feeling inside that something was wrong, but I thought it was me. So it's this fear, this underlying fear, like, oh my God, I'm going to do it again. I'm just not mature enough. Why do these things bother me? Why can't I just do it? Um, I didn't know until later, like years later, when I had trouble like holding jobs and not knowing why. every 6 months, it's like, time to look for a new job. And it got really bad at this one job towards the end where I was working in an office and I could not pay attention during Monday morning meetings
Mm.
to save my life. And I kept drinking like obscene amounts of coffee. And then eventually I was drinking so much coffee that I was like mood swinging, shaking, but then,
Uh,
you know, the coffee machine upstairs just to get through the afternoon. And the drive to work in the morning, feeling groggy, not knowing I had ADHD, not knowing I need a stimulant to make my brain work. Uh, uh, Eventually, the anxiety got so so bad that I was so desperate because I'm always racing to work, I'm always late. Um, Eventually, I'm like, I'm going to get in a car accident. And I couldn't take it. The anxiety was so high. I started putting vodka in my coffee. I did that once. And I'm like, I have a problem. This is not okay. What is wrong? And I'm thinking I'm perfectly normal. So I'm thinking I'm just losing my mind. I'm thinking I have like bipolar or something. I'm like, why am I mood swinging all the time? So I ended up touching base with a friend I went to high school with, and his parents are both psychologists. So he kind of grew up hearing some of these things, just by being around them. And he says, I think you have ADHD. And it's funny because in the 90s and the 2000s, I was just like, that's bullshit.
Seriously,
Sorry
yeah.
to swear, but I'm like, that's just a bunch of bullshit.
It was
Everybody has
it was
this.
crazy little boys in the classroom that had ADHD and got put
I
on
thought it
drugs.
was just like something I'm like, people are feeling sorry for themselves. Come on now. That's ridiculous. I thought it was some new age thing. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I just need to suck it up. And you know what? It wasn't. And I can't tell you how over my lifetime, if I had known earlier between that and untreated depression,
Mm.
there were periods of either months or sometimes a year or more where I was housebound with a severe depression, because I have that as well. And so then you end up having a breakdown because you don't know what's wrong with you, and then you have to go to counseling. You feel insane because it's this invisible thing that you don't know is there. As soon as you do know, and I wish I did, it just kills me all those years that I was suffering, and nobody around me knew how to help me because they didn't know. Um, but they were very, supportive. I'm very grateful that I had my parents' house to move back to when I had to. It was it's not fun to have to move back with the folks. I'm with my mom now, um, partially because of my issues affecting work. But you know what? I'm happy to be here, and I hope that things that I've learned that have helped me and things I'm learning now also that I've been trying, I would love to share some of these tricks with people, some of these tools that people can put in their toolbox that they can actually use to see if they can regulate themselves, if they can give themselves structure so they can deal with the symptoms. So hopefully they can get the things done and not get swallowed up by the couch for 4 hours. And then the whole time blindness thing, that's a real thing. I have that. That's a real thing.
Mm.
Um, I can't wait to look up I have a background in, I was a nursing student, so I do have a year of that, and I have this geek mind. Talk about special interest.
Yeah.
I will look up medical journals, and I think I was doing that before I even took any medical classes, and I didn't know how to read it, but I was determined. So, yeah, there is an actual part of your brain in the back. I think it's in the back. I'll find out what part of your brain it is, but I don't know if you deal with time blindness. I know that there is an overlap between autism and ADHD that they know now. So some of the symptoms that I have that you might associate with autism, they are learning can be caused by ADHD. So I have a lot of confusion, and I'm just kind of going through this process right now. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more, sharing more, helping other people because I'll tell you what, going through this alone is like you're already feeling like you're walking through cement and other people get to run on the ground.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. Um, Tell us how,
And I
for
apologize
me,
if I'm all over the place because
no,
of
no, 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 no. For
mm,
me, I was diagnosed so late that I don't know about, like, how to unmask, if I was masking, what's my real I really just am not sure. Have you experienced any of that? I mean, did you
um
find yourself sort of trying to change your personality to fit
mm,
into situations, and
yes,
when you learned.
it's ingrained for me since a young age. So it's interesting. Learning about masking is new for me. The action of doing it is something that is ingrained. Well, at least in my experience. I know that everybody is different. Everybody's ADHD is different. Everybody who has autism, each autistic person has different symptoms, and that's okay. Um, I'm learning that a lot of different people who are neurodivergent, it's almost like the default way of living. If you don't know you're neurodivergent, like for me, since you're a little girl, it's like you talk too much. Sit up. You know, you're in school, you're in class, it's like, "Stop talking, stop." So you're like, if you're fidgeting, they're like, "Stop, hold your hands." And then all of that feedback, it's constant, right? So if you're a little kid, you're stimming, you're doing these things you don't know you're not supposed to, and it's almost like the job of the school to get everyone to conform. They don't know they're doing that because they are trying to help us, and we do need to learn about things. And if you do want to work in a traditional work environment, you do need to learn certain skills to regulate. It's such a murky thing, right? So if you're around people who don't know you're neurodivergent and you don't want to disclose, you're kinda stuck masking. Now
Yeah.
for me, luckily, I was a chatterbox. I talked too much, and I think because since I was a teenager, my very first job was working at a department store, and I have worked countless retail environments, that since then, I was forced to approach customers and initiate conversations with them, which was terrifying. So I think if I didn't have that, I would probably have the same issues, communicating with strangers, not wanting to do small talk. But I think at 49, I started my first retail job at 19, and on and off all of those years, it's just the constant practice that I can do small talk. Um,
Mm.
it's it's uncomfortable for
Good for
well,
you.
I can do it. I think of it as just like you're doing this to make somebody feel comfortable.
Right.
Somebody comes to your register, you're saying, "Hi, how are you today?" And it's almost like my way of reaching out. And I think maybe because I tend to be empathic and I care so much, and I have this feeling that I think a lot of neurodivergent people might be empathic. And I think there might be a connection between all of the feeling alone growing up, suffering, going through different hardships in life. We probably go through more. Everybody goes through hardships, but if your constant is that you don't get along with your family, you don't get along with people, or you isolate and you feel so alien. Like when I was a little kid, I didn't talk to people. I had friends that were either a lot younger than me or adults, right? I was scared the other kids, they'd make fun of me. I wasn't one of
Mhm.
them. I didn't
Yeah.
know why. So that part is similar between ADHD and autism, for sure, for sure.
Absolutely.
You'll be
Absolutely.
that kid that's kinda playing in my own head, and it's
Mhm.
funny, I remember being in high school, being in art class and talking and then suddenly going into my head and doing art. And then I heard another kid on the other side going, "Did you notice how she's paying attention to you and now she's really quiet?" And I'm in my head, but I heard him and I just kept pretending I didn't hear him. So, yeah, masking, I think a lot of it's ingrained. because you learn from teachers and then eventually, from family and friends, sit still. You didn't speak unless you were spoken to. It's a different generation. So, and you didn't cry, and you did as a little kid, but you were sent to your room. So maybe that conditioning, not, I would still have meltdowns, but I would be so ashamed that I would try to force myself not to have it.
I
But
want to
yeah.
take a second and acknowledge our viewers. We've got 7 people on right now.
No.
Camille said, or Camilla, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which way, said, hello. Hi, girlfriend. Thanks for being with us today. If you have any questions, let us know. This is Sherry. She has been diagnosed with ADHD. Sherry, I'm interested to know what you think about the difference in, I'm just going to say, women now being diagnosed very, very young. What is the advantage that they have over a late diagnosis? Like, I wasn't diagnosed till 45. I can only imagine, even just the awareness, even if I didn't have any support, the awareness would have been life altering for me. I can't even imagine in like how many different ways. But when I watch the younger creators who have known maybe for a very long time, they
Yeah.
think they're late diagnosed when they're like diagnosed at 15. And I'm like,
Oh.
I get it, but so what do you think might have been different for you, or what do you see, if anything, when you look at other creators who've known? And do they have advantages? Do you have any advantages of maybe that time where you didn't know, and now you can take that into your life um, with that knowledge and wisdom of thinking or feeling I should be normal. What's wrong with me? What is that like for you?
I actually wonder a lot about that. Even before I started looking at YouTube, and sorry, I'm dehydrated.
That's all
Mm,
right.
everybody, I have an idea for you. If you forget to drink water, you can get one of these. They have them at CVS. They have them on Amazon. I mean, you've seen these. I know this is crazy. I use a measuring cup and I put my own lines on there so that I can
Oh,
see
good.
what I have. And if I didn't have that bottle, I wouldn't know how much. And I might drink like this much all day. And then I can't think straight. Right. And then I
So
put it
but
on my
I have
phone.
to, is it
Sorry, I
just
got off
water?
track.
Is it just water, or are
Oh,
you adding electrolytes? Because you can flush away your minerals
oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
everything.
Yeah, you have to be careful about
Yeah,
that. You don't, as long as you're not drinking it all at once. You're right about the electrolyte balance. It's usually more, from what I learned in nursing school, it's usually more for people who are running a marathon. Or there was a young man who was in a frat party or something, and they forced him to drink like over a gallon of water all at once. So as long as you're
so
spacing
dangerous.
through the day, and I do have the Gatorades as well, so I do have some electrolytes as I go, so it's good. But
That's
yeah,
good.
you have an
I'm
app.
drinking dirt. Do you see I'm drinking literal dirt? I think
How
this is
did
one
you
of those
get that?
autistic things. Okay, so here's how this happened. I got my coffee was in here, and I
Yeah.
drank that. So then I poured water in it, and it was like
Oh,
cloudy coffee water. And then I added ice and lemon juice. Okay,
you're
so I
so
don't.
sweet.
So then I went outside, and I don't really have anywhere to set my coffee, and so I set it in my mint planter on the dirt. And so it got dirt on the bottom, but I literally don't know how it got dirt inside of it, but I'm still
Yeah,
drinking
it's
it. And I'm like,
fun.
why would I do other people? No, no one else. Is this an autistic thing? I mean, like, is this where I just don't care? I don't know, but
I could see myself doing that. You know,
drinking it
I think
anyway. But
autism I would, a little bit of germs aren't bad for you. They're not.
little fertilizer soil.
It's good
No,
for
I'm
your
not.
immune
Yeah,
system.
absolutely, absolutely.
I think it's proprioception is and I know this is an ADHD thing, and I think it might be an autism thing. Anyone with autism can let us know. Being aware of yourself in respect to your surroundings. So
Yeah, that's
I'm
definitely an autistic thing for me, and I had no idea.
I'm clumsy.
They would say, okay, but here's the thing. It's like people on the spectrum can be clumsy, and I'm like, that's not me. Okay, that is me. But I'm
Yeah.
so fast, if I knock something over, I catch it, right?
Ah,
I'm quick. So I
you might
always
have ADHD.
I think I might be a blend there. Yeah. I mean, I've got 100% all the autistic, well, all the very, like, I would be considered Asperger's. When I was diagnosed, it would have been
Yeah,
Asperger's,
me too. I
right?
got ADHD.
However, I had the delayed speech, which is considered autism. So then they
Oh.
mushed it all together. So I've got the delayed speech and high IQ, social awkwardness, the whole deal. But then I've seen videos where one woman was saying how ADHD sort of cancels out the autistic stuff. It doesn't, but
It
it's
camouflages it.
exactly. So being chatty. So
Yep.
I was nonverbal, and I would be
Mhm,
nonverbal if I didn't drink coffee. So I drink coffee and then I'm overly chatty, overly sharing. And when you were talking about small talk,
mhm,
girl, I can do that whole like customer service small
mhm,
talk thing.
mhm.
The problem is beyond that 30 seconds in an actual conversation where you're trying to get to know someone and you go deep and too deep and they're like, you're weird and you
No,
reveal too much about yourself and it's just like doesn't work.
yeah. If this helps, and I don't know if this is like a neurotypical, translator. I see people, like, all the time when I'm working retail, right? So, I tend to try to see, and maybe this is because I felt so different growing up, and people might relate to this. It's almost like you have to be hyper vigilant of the moods of people around you, and you're trying to read, like, how are they feeling? How do I act today? Am I gonna be in trouble? Am I doing the wrong thing? So, maybe that's part of it, but I can tell when people are coming in, and I see that maybe the neurodivergent versus neurotypical part is why I can get disillusioned over the years, because I see a lot of people are, and part of it's our culture these days. Everything is like you get what you came in to get, you're in your own world, you're on your phone, or you got the headphones in,
Yeah.
and people will interrupt each other while I'm talking to them, or they come to the register and um, they don't care, right? But you can feel that. And so you give them what they need. You say hi, you go through the things, and you're just nice, and then you end the sale, and then they go. But if they want to talk, they will. And if that's what they want to talk with, I'm happy to talk with them about that. And you know what? I get something out of that because sometimes I get the coolest interactions you would never expect. And I get a lot of shallow interactions with people who don't wanna go deep. I actually got in trouble once because I try to be friends with people because I care, right? Because I think like a neurodivergent, so I don't understand when other people don't care because I care. I don't understand when people are dishonest because I'm not.
Oh, that I thought until I was 30. I remember the very first time it occurred to me that not everybody cares about integrity and honesty. And
Yeah,
it's
I get
not like in that moment I realized it. I had to keep realizing it, remembering it over and over and over and over and over until now I'm just like I don't believe anything anybody says.
yeah, yes,
You
and
know?
it sounds terrible. Don't be disillusioned, like, don't go through your life, it's so, so, so hard, and I know everyone experience is different, and for people who have higher needs and have been absolutely bullied or an abusive household growing up or abusive relationships, this is not going to be as easy for them, and I my heart goes out to you, anyone who's going through that. Feel free to seek counseling if you need to. It takes a lot of pride. It's really difficult. But if you can try to, and if you don't feel respected by your counselor, if you can communicate on your own, um, try to if you can. It's up to you. But it's good to try to see if you can find people to advocate for you. It's a it's a tough world out there, right? And they
Mhm.
teach us these rules. But if we can learn to kinda in the back of your mind, think that people might be dishonest unless they prove otherwise. Tune into your feelings in your body. If you're intuitive, if you get that feeling, a lot of times, and this actually makes sense, I was just thinking this. One of the things that you hear about being neurodivergent is this detachment from the feelings in your body, the detachment from feelings because you're so into the thing that you're doing, you're hyper focusing. Now, both I do this, and that's also both an ADHD thing and an autism thing, is that we'll have our interest. Now, for ADHD people, you might bounce around a whole bunch of different ones, but you still are like, that's all you care about, right? And you don't want to be
Can
disturbed.
Sherry, can you see the chat?
No.
Okay. So Shelly Dean just asked, hi Shelly, and thank you everybody for watching. It's very heartwarming to see everyone coming on and listening. It's great. It's like kind of the first time in history that neurodivergence, which we'll explain in just a second, get together and talk, because usually we're kind of isolated and outcast and we don't find one another. So Shelly asked, what's neurodivergent? Sherry, do you want to answer that?
I would love to. So,
And
neurodivergent.
can I interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
Hi, busy octopus. I have to let you guys know how I am trying so hard to sit still right now. I'm a shifter and a fidgeter, and I know it's
You
to
don't have
watch an
to.
interview, but I've watched interviews and I'm like, when one person is real fidgety that's not talking, it distracts from the person who's talking. And when I watched the four creators
Oh.
the other day, I noticed how still most of them were sitting, and if someone was fidgeting, it was so distracting. So I'm trying so
Oh.
hard. So I just need to move my legs.
I go
So
for it.
Sherry, please. Yeah, you're a
Mhm.
rocker.
I rock, and if I stim and I rock or I fidget and I don't realize it and it's distracting to anyone, please tell me. I will try to be mindful. It's like a subconscious.
Shelly Dean in the comments said that she's a rocker. Yeah. And I've noticed I'll start doing this, but I thought it was because I have a broken back. And so sometimes I need to shift my weight. But I
Yeah.
realized that it's actually a calming and a
Um,
soothing stim. So Sherry, please explain to us what is neurodivergent
Divergent.
and neurotypical.
So, a recent video that I watched, and I will send you, Genevieve, the link to it so that you can post it. It's
Great.
from PBS. It's short, it's not too long, and it explains all of this in a very good way. It does focus on autism. However, they do explain all of the things that are within the neurodivergent umbrella. So that really helps to understand. So, what the word neurodivergent comes from is if you have a condition such as ADHD, autism on the spectrum, which now I guess all of us are on it, OCD, and I can't remember what the other thing is. That's part of the neurodivergence. And what the idea came from is as you're growing up in the 80s and the 90s and until recently, you were pretty much the idea was something is wrong with you. If you have a problem and you have this disability, and now they're learning it is, there's something wrong with you, right? So they are now there was one woman, and I can't remember her name, but it is in this video. So this is a really great video to watch. I think it's 12 minutes. I don't remember. It's short.
I'll post
But
the link in the
awesome.
description
It's
when
awesome.
this after we're done.
It's PBS, so it's very informative. So neurodivergent became a different way to look at it. Now, what we didn't know, which we know now, I'm not an expert. I just want to tell everybody these are just things I've had to educate myself with. So if there's any information I give that is older or not correct, please let us know. I'm
I
not a
don't think,
doctor.
honestly, I don't think
Mhm.
anyone's an expert. I think the experts are the least expert if they're not on the spectrum. If there's an expert on the spectrum, I consider them an actual expert. But if you really want to know, listen to the neurodivergents who are creating content, because they are the experts and you'll see all the overlap. So I just had to throw that in there because the experts, I've been gaslit, I've been laughed at and mocked
They
and
believe it. They
not
believe
and
it.
misdi and malpracticed on by
There's a lot of
experts.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
Mm.
fine.
So I think your question that I'm sorry I'm all over the place because of
Go,
what I have.
girl.
Um, this question, what is neurodivergence, is so, so, so important. So neuro, your brain. If we get into science, it is like the neuroscience has to do with the science of the brain, right? And we think like people are born in all their brains. We always thought they're kind of the same. There are actual differences in our brains. Now, I don't remember how. I did look up some journals about this, and if I can later on, I will try to find it again. But ADHD, both ADHD and autism are technically neurodevelopmental disabilities. So, what does that mean? That means either because of injury, maybe when you're a baby, or genetics, which I think is mostly genetics, your brain is formed differently. So you actually have a different brain. And because you have a different brain, the way it works is different. Only we didn't used to know that, right?
Mhm.
So now there was one woman who, and I can't remember what her expertise or her name is, forgive me. She says, you know what? There is diversity in nature, right? And animals are consistently changing. And that's how we have evolution, which is a great thing. So we have diversity with hair color, we have diversity with culture, we have diversity, racial diversity, we have diversity, everything, right? So why wouldn't we have diversity neurologically, right? So it's just looking at it like, hey, this is a neurotype, and there are certain gifts, there are certain disabilities that come with that. Now, if you reach back into history and you look at people who are thought to have had, we can only speculate. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I would love to learn more about what people think Einstein would have been. I've heard that
Yes,
some people think he
Einstein
might
for sure.
have been autistic.
Delayed speech.
Hmm. Yeah.
He would get super focused on stuff. They actually sent him away to a boarding school, I think, because he was acting out against his little sister or something. He was having some like mood kind of disorder issues or whatever, or acting out that way, but he was brilliant.
Yeah.
And here's something that I know, speaking exactly to the genetics you're talking about and the diversity, there's a
Hmm.
higher prevalence of Asperger's, which would now be considered autism, in the Ashkenazi Jewish lineage. And that part of the world, like when you look at Nikola Tesla, he wasn't necessarily Ashkenazi Jewish, but he's from wherever he
Yes.
was from, Austria or something like that.
I would
Um,
mention.
so right, so when you look at, um, I had a boyfriend, and every time he'd be like, "That person was weird." I'm like, "They're Jewish." Probably on the spectrum, right? And it's this personality difference that you can just kind of sense that there's something off.
Yeah,
And not me, I'm like, "Woo, I found my people."
yeah,
But other people are like, "Something's a little off." And there's a higher prevalence in that lineage, in that part of the world. And they'll probably find the same thing as they start to really diagnose more and more and more people. Like, okay, here's a pocket where we're finding more prevalence in this genetic group and in this genetic group. What does it mean?
right. You know what? I've been thinking about maybe looking into getting screened to see if I am on the spectrum as well. And that will be really interesting to learn about. Um, I wish we knew all of these things before. It would be really helpful. But you know what? I this just occurred to me last summer that I might be on the spectrum. And it never even occurred to me.
I know,
I
right?
had ADHD. And like some content creators on here who have both, they really are expressing how, because of the differences between the two of them, they can seem to, behaviorally on the outside, kind of cover up the symptoms. So it actually
For
makes,
a little bit, right? People have told me, "Oh, you don't seem like whatever." I'm like, "Give it a minute."
yeah. Well,
Give it a little while.
if you mask your entire life and that's your default mode, you're just gonna do it. It's not a choice. For me, it's
Yeah.
just you act a way that you think you're supposed to until you know that person's safe, until you decide, you know, I can go out
See,
and pick
I'm not
them.
like that. I like literally just it comes out and I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
Okay, and I just kind of stopped trying to do that, but there's still times when I'm like myself and I'm like, "Oh my god, that was so cringe." So Shelly in the comments, she
Mhm.
says this seems like a hard diagnosis. Yes, my son is really going through it. He's going to my doctor next week. I will mention this to my doctor.
Yeah.
What, Shelly? The autism and ADHD together? I hope he's got a really, really good therapist, and probably you as well. Does all of this seems like Shelly is really relating to a lot of what we're saying here? And I know we've got two people in our chat. Oops, two people in our chat right now. Maybe the busy octopus. What does that mean? Um, okay. Um,
What
okay.
symptoms what symptoms is he having?
So, Shelly, what symptoms is your son experiencing?
Struggling with in school, and how old is he?
And what, Shelly, have you noticed? When had my autism screening, it wasn't like, well, tell me about yourself and what are
No.
you going through? It was like, tell me about your childhood, early childhood. And I had to go and ask my parents and
Mhm.
remember a bunch of things. And I remember combined symptoms, and he's 21. And I
Mhm.
remember, okay,
I have a thought for her.
yes, girl.
Would that be okay? Am I interrupting? Will you forget?
No, go,
'Cause I
go, bring it.
my idea for her, is that I would just if he has a counselor, have him ask the counselor, to be screened for ADHD. Because I don't know if it is now, but if he has trouble sitting still and he has trouble paying attention if he's in school, he's getting worse and worse.
Oh, are you
No,
reading
no.
this? Okay, you
Yeah,
can read it. You can see it.
he really needs to have somebody to talk to. Is he in hi he's 21. Oh my god, this is when I had basically it was a mental, like, breakdown for me. It was a little bit after that, that age. It was terrible, and I knew that I was basically going to crash my car. It was that time that I was not feeling in control, and I'm trying to force myself to be like an adult, and I'm like, "Why am I never on time?" And then it's like, I'm lashing out, I'm being quiet, I'm having a hard time functioning. Um, so the ADHD, screening is much, much easier. And so that would be a great place to start. You can I don't know if this helps him. I have a video, it's horrible video. I wasn't even gonna put it on, I wasn't gonna put it on. And then I thought, "You know what? I've been
Do it.
struggling, uh, I've been struggling so much that I thought, you know what? I will sacrifice myself to all the negativity because I look horrible. I'm rambling. Nobody's gonna stay. And I looked at the analytics, and literally, as soon as people clicked on, after a minute, they were gone. And I'm like, oh my god, I was rambling, and it's bad. But if you can
No,
watch through
it's
both of those videos, it's long. I'm talking about this dream, but the thing is that it made me realize, and this isn't like I'm not any guru, but it kind of for that it crystallized in that moment that, and I don't know what your beliefs are, that I feel, I hope we're supposed to be here. So if everything like what he's feeling, I have felt and I still struggle with. I still some days I just don't want to be alive. I want to but I don't want to act on it. I
so
don't.
I'm
And the
interested to
reason
know from Shelly, was he verbal before? Why isn't he speaking now? What are what are his support needs? What are his support needs? I'm glad you're on, and make sure you jump over to Lady Phoenix and also subscribe to her channel.
I'm
She can
just
repost.
starting.
She's just new as a creator. We want to get her to 1,000 subscribers so she can do lives as well. Because I think for people on the spectrum, on the neurodivergent, sometimes it's easier to just jump on spontaneously. Um, and having others, people, come on and engage with us is super important. And I think for all of us now going through this, and Shelley, you kind of indicated that you yourself think maybe you're on the spectrum and neurodivergent somewhere, and you'll learn a lot from your son's journey, and that's all super super important. And if you're creating content, let us know, because we'll come on and sub to your channel too. It's we've got to have a big neurodivergent love fest and get everybody out there and being watched, so that our community can learn and thrive and create that expert body of work that's real instead of textbook. Because I know how they describe people on the spectrum, like, you don't have empathy. Y'all
Mm,
don't know that we have too much empathy, that we have to shut that off, or we're empathizing over every little thing, everything.
I'm I am seeing the text here. Um, I
Oh,
am
I'm so sorry you're going through that. And I'm so
I
sorry
had
he's
a
going through that.
I had a very close friend when I was young, and she has schizophrenia, and that was very difficult for me because I was not one of the family. It was a friend of mine. She was my best friend's older sister. I won't get into anything identifiable because even though I've
Yeah.
been in touch with them, especially her, for many, many years, I love her and I want her to do well. But that is that's a serious thing and it's not her fault. And I think that that might be the first thing to treat, honestly, because you have to stabilize, if possible, the schizophrenia because it's going to be telling him all of these scary things that aren't real.
The meds really concern me though, because
They're
they
bad, but
they bring
they're
on the side effects can be debilitating, and then they stop
yeah.
because they don't like the side effects,
But
or they stop because they feel like they're fine now,
this
and
is
then they,
what
you
right,
know
I hear you, but this is where and I'm not saying to you specifically or me or anybody, this is when it's dealing with a life or death situation, like schizophrenia is very, very serious and it becomes a life or death situation because if they think somebody's harming them and they're hallucinating, they might act out and harm someone. Or in
right.
my friend tried to harm herself and then she tried to run off a balcony when they tried
Ay.
yeah, she tried to end it,
Mm.
and
Gosh, I
so
mean,
and
that's
then
just scary for
she was in
everyone.
the hospital for a while, and then she ended up going into like I said, I'm not gonna give any identifiable information, that's the only way I can talk about it, but she ended
Yeah.
up in a hospital for a while, and they had her on very strong meds, but this is where we need to trust the experts because this is something they are trained for, and they do have to take medication sometimes that
Yeah.
medications are not without harm, but the reason why they are prescribed is the doctor who is the expert and who knows the other medications that person's taking, knows the other conditions that person has, and knows that person's physiology, does the weighing, the pro and con is what is
Yeah.
of the least harm. What
Yes.
so what's the harm to benefit ratio? That's what they do. So the doctor may see this person is a danger to themselves or other person and is suffering terribly.
Yeah.
Now, taking this medication may be bad for their liver, may be bad. And this is where some of my medical classes come in that I can have an understanding. I'm not an expert, but I have an understanding that they teach us these things. That's why it's very important that anybody who gets sick, don't take your friend's prescription. Any prescription is not necessarily safe, but it is deemed that the benefit outweighs the harm. So if somebody is in danger of themselves or to other people, yes, they're gonna put them on medication that's scary because that is what we have at our disposal now, and these things are constantly being evaluated, and what they do is they if the medication is something that is going to over time damage somebody's liver or be a harm to their health, that's less dangerous than somebody hurting themselves right now.
I would be more concerned about the psych
Agreed.
effects.
They do monitor these things very, very carefully.
Yeah.
I didn't get to the point I was in school for a year and my family had to move, and it was just enough that I was 1/10 of a point shy in one of my classes, so I was out, and it wasn't the right time, and I won't get into that because
Sure.
that's not important right now,
Yeah.
but I did not have my psych clinical rotation, but I've had a lot of people close to me since I was young who had major depression, bipolar, ADHD, um, chronic anxiety, all different like mental health conditions. And then as an adult, I was drawn to people who were suffering with mental health things because that's what I knew. So I have like there's a familiarity and there's a certain knowledge that I have just from my experiences, but take from it what you can. Like I said, and I will
Wow.
I'm not an expert, but yes, we really, really need to trust the experts on this. If something is a danger to them for medication to stabilize their schizophrenia, they screen. They will periodically have the patient
Mm,
come and do screenings to see if it's damaging certain organs, and then
yeah.
they can try other things. But their life being in danger is of the utmost importance. I'm so
Absolutely. I mean,
the utmost important.
that is
He is
why.
worthy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have struggled. I had started my periods very, very late. I was a late bloomer, and then they were irregular. You know, I had like 1 or 2 periods my first year and second year, and then they were just kind of all over the place until I had my kids, and then they became regular. But by that, I had my first son at 34 and my second son at 40. So I had this whole entire adulthood not knowing that I had PMDD, mood disorder. I didn't have the bad physical symptoms. I had the mood disorder,
Yeah,
but I didn't know it. So I felt completely justified. And a lot
yeah.
of the things I would freak out about were things that I was just not reacting to because I had control. And then, I'd get
Mhm.
PMS or whatever and unleash
You were
and freak
triggered,
out, right?
right.
And it got so, so bad, probably when I entered perimenopause,
Mhm.
not knowing that I got the like 1% um, tendency to unalive myself for a few months. And that's when I realized, because I have children, I don't have the luxury of treating this holistically. I
Right.
need to be on something. And what I found out is they put you on Prozac, but it works differently on women with this mood disorder where you can take it like Midol, but it works better. The first one, you take it like for when you need it, basically.
Oh, when you have
And
PMDD?
yes,
So
so it's
just
like
during
half of
those
your
days.
cycle, like
Oh, that's
half your
interesting.
cycle, or, I tried doing it just like during those days, but I found I needed to. I have 7 kids. Oh, good God. Bless you, lady.
Can I can I
So hang on
interrupt?
one second. Let me just so I started taking it, and the very first one I took, within 45 minutes, I was just sitting calmly, not thinking. There wasn't the racing thoughts and internal rage and tension and everything. I'm like, "Oh my God, this must be what it feels like to be normal. Just
That's
relax and not thinking."
That's how I felt the first time I took ADHD meds, but that's a whole nother conversation because I have that's a whole nother thing. But, would it be okay if I pause for a second and ask Shelly a question? Um, does any of the things that we're talking about, is any of this help you with your son? Um, is there a way that he can see a counselor and get okay,
So there's a
because
slight delay between her seeing us and responding and us seeing it. So throw that question out there and just let her give her a minute to answer.
I
So go
I
ahead and repeat what that question was.
me?
Hmm.
I was just and I think she said, "Yes, yes." I was asking Shelly if we answered her question or gave her information that she needed. Granted, we're here talking about neurodiversity. We're not counselors. We're not qualified to talk about schizophrenia, but I was just, really concerned, for him. And you won't be able to if he is symptomatic, it's my just yeah, let me see, when I saw the Okay, this is the busy octopus talking about nice. And it
Oh,
sucks
wow,
when
brand new, 4th day.
it's really tricky with medications, both with ADHD from the people I've known and myself and my family and um antidepressants. We all have different brain chemistry, and that's why sometimes something that helps you may make my problem worse.
Okay.
It's like this dance that the counselor and the prescribers and all of them do is they have to get to know you, what your symptoms are, your physiology, and they start with a basic one, whether it's with the antidepressants or well, in my case, they didn't want to put me on ADHD meds a few years back. They wanted to start with bupropion with Wellbutrin, which I was at that time not treating my depression, not acknowledging I had it, refused to take it, and I filled it and I put it in a drawer. Then years later, I was kind of forced to. And that was one of those aha moments like, oh my God, all those times in my life where I was having depressions, all those years wasted.
Yep.
But
I'm just like you where I'll go through that for like a year, maybe a year and a half, and it's like that shutdown, and I always thought it was like, okay, I'm going through a bout of depression, and now people are talking like that autistic shutdown. And I'm like, well, what's really the difference? What is the difference? Am I just overwhelmed in life and burned out, or am I actually depressed? I
that I
mean,
that I cannot speak on
I don't
because
know.
learning about autism is new for me. So I
Mhm.
probably don't know anything different
What
than
are the
that, but I know
what
they're
are
on
the ADHD meds? What
ADHD.
are they?
They are mostly stimulants. Um, I know
Like
that when
Ritalin?
mhm,
Is that
and
still one of them?
mhm,
I
I
want to
take
try it.
I take I could do a whole live with you on my negative experiences looking for medicine, trying to get it when I was younger, the stigma of it, me refusing to like I have a whole
Yeah.
lifetime of stories to tell you guys. If you yeah, it's I have there's few things that I have personal feelings about, and medication is one of them, and I've been on all the different sides of it. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was really frustrating as an adult trying to seek out medication years ago, even before they had this shortage of the medication.
There's a
Um,
shortage?
oh my god, yeah.
Oh, that's
And
horrible.
yeah, and I have an idea if anybody is interested. Yay! Thank you,
Thank you,
Shelley.
Shelley.
I have an idea, and I so prejudice and ableism. I was prejudiced and ableist before I even knew what it was, and before I accepted that I had ADHD. I'm starting to see it everywhere, and it actually helps me to understand. Pharmacists have done it to me. I've seen pharmacists do it to other people. I'm not slamming pharmacists, by the way. They're human like us. They just didn't know
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Now, if you're working in a pharmacy and COVID comes, and okay, so how am I going to do this without rambling on and on? I'm
The
trying.
ramble, it's fine.
So, the thing with, and I don't know, but I think it's similar with autism. You hear that the initial beliefs of autism are very similar to the beliefs about ADHD, and they used to think it was mostly boys.
Mhm.
Because at least now with ADHD, I know about because I have, and I've known about it half my life. Um, they didn't look for it in women or girls because girls tend, when you're younger, you tend to have what they used to separate it ADD and ADHD. They have now taken that out, and the DSM-5 categorizes all of them as ADHD.
Interesting.
It's kind of confusing, and then they separate it into ADHD hyperactive, ADHD, um, which is what I am, which is without the hyperactivity.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
that's stupid because the H stands for hyperactive. ADD
right.
makes sense to me, and I think I was ADD in school. When I
They
was a
just
little
stand for
girl, I
nothing.
should have been given coffee before school. I was in a fog. Like, I was
Coffee,
always walking around confused unless I was on the playground playing with kids. I was just
coffee,
confused.
coffee helps a little being a stimulant, but I used to try to go without medication for years, just out of pride. I don't know if it's because 'cause I'm a Gen Xer and I'm like, "I was born with this. I don't need no medication.
Yeah.
I don't wanna take that crap." But I just started doing that again this past year, and of course, it happened during COVID, after the COVID caused
Doing what?
sort of
Like where you didn't wanna take meds or you started taking your meds
years
during COVID?
started taking them because I had to get help.
Yeah.
And 2 summers ago, my depression and my ADHD were so bad that I was not getting out of bed, and I was blaming myself. Like, in my own head, I thought I could just snap out of it. I didn't
Mhm.
realize that I needed help, and it got so
Yeah.
bad. My fiancé was just I think he was just like, he couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Leave me, and he said, "I please get help. I will go with you." I was not functional. And I've actually kinda slowly cut my work days back to 2 days a week, partially because of my back from retail
Mm.
and partially, because of the sensitivities. But, like, on my days off, I wouldn't get out of bed, and it's bad. So, I had to and I'm glad he pushed me. I'm like, "I'm going to lose my relationship," at that point was 10 years of a decade. "I'm gonna
Oh my
lose him.
gosh.
He's gonna leave," and I don't blame him. Because you can't and it's not anything against me, it's just you can't save another person, you can't fix another person, even if you want to. It's funny because I had a previous relationship where I was the caretaker, so, like, I had to go through that and that loss, and I won't get into that because that's, like, a different lifetime. But, I had to learn about codependency, and I was the one who was the enabler, and so now somebody was enabling me. Now, granted, you have a mental illness such as depression, or you have a disability as ADHD. It is not your fault, and you can't fix it by itself. But nobody was going to drag me to get the things I need to get better. I had to go. And I have this anxiety calling healthcare, and I had all I could do to sit in a car and I like start crying and shaking because I have this phobia of like being on hold and calling and trying to get appointments when you haven't had doctors in forever. So then I had to sit in the car and it took me like a day of calling back the insurance and then the insurance my insurance was dealing with to get a
Oh,
mental health list of the and then calling them and trying to get somebody. Thank God.
I can't do any of that. I mean, like, I
No.
can't do any I just
If I
I don't
lived
have doctors, I don't see doctors. I mean, the next time I see a doctor, it'll probably be like if I mean, like, I just don't do it. I can't. I've been it ugh.
I'm it's been 7 years since I have gone to the doctors, and I haven't been to the dent we
Yeah.
don't and I think that that's part of ADHD as well as depression, you don't care as much, but that's the depression.
I
You
would
don't care.
go if I didn't have such bad experiences with doctors. I was
Oh,
fired by my doctor during COVID. Now I was
okay.
asthmatic since the time I was 6 months old. I lived in a little oxygen tent in the hospital for a while, all kinds of tests. My whole childhood was and then as I got older into an adult, my asthma attacks started getting worse until I ended up in the ICU, intubated in the emergency room. It was horrible.
Mhm.
And so not only do I just have medical trauma PTSD, which I was diagnosed with while at the same time I got my autism screening and diagnosis, she's like, you also
Mhm.
have medical trauma
Yeah,
PTSD, right? So during COVID, I asked if I could, because we had to go and sit in the waiting room for 45 minutes with a mask over our face. And it's like,
that's a
that to
trigger.
me is that's freak out time. And I
Yeah,
asked my doctor for telehealth and he yelled at me, called me a drama queen, said I'm lying, I don't have pulmonary issues. He was my pain management doctor. I don't even know
yeah.
why I had a pain management doctor because I wouldn't take pain meds for the longest time. But he fired me and said, go find another doctor.
Don't let that stop you. Absolutely do not let that
There's
stop you.
so many of those. That's why I'm
No.
saying we need more neurodivergent doctors out there who are going to believe us.
Keep trying. I don't want to tell you what to do. It's not my place.
No,
But
encouragement helps.
if you're open to it, if that is your greatest fear, like for me, catching up with these doctor's appointments, I put that in my planner list, and I can't wait to show you guys how I've started to try to get myself to do things that are, like, impossible for me with my ADHD and my issues that I have with that. But I have a list of things I have to do that I'm dreading, like taxes and bills that I owe that are in default, and then also getting doctors. I don't know why I get phobic about it, I just do. But I'm
That's
making.
called, I just learned the term for that, demand avoidance.
Oh, yeah, and I
Like
have
it's
that.
like it's like
Mhm. Yep.
cannot do until
Hi,
it's
Boozy. I
until
just
it's too late,
yes, and we could do a whole thing just on that 'cause, I
as
just
we
started
shall.
I just started talking to my counselor, sorry, about PDA. I just wanted to say, one of our texters is saying goodbye.
Yes.
I don't know if the officer is still here, but thank you for listening to us. Um, I dealt with a lot of these things by myself, trying to figure out by myself, and I'm thinking, if we all come together, even if we have individual pages, even if you're just don't wanna have a page and you just wanna start listening to people, even if it's not me, even if it's is it Genevieve? That's your
Mhm.
name. I saw you as your handle. I didn't know what your name was until today, I apologize.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's fine.
so eventually you will, if it's not us, you'll find somebody that something clicks and resonates with you. And I don't know what I believe. I'm not going to get religious or spiritual right now, but whatever your beliefs are, if it's a higher power or nature, whatever, sometimes there's these little synchronicities that happen. It's almost like life is giving you little clues, like, I kind of have to do this. Listen to those, like maybe this is an opportunity. If getting a new start with the primary, like, might help you. Some of the tips
I have to
that
get
my
insurance first.
Oh. Do you guys have, like, in Massachusetts, we have Mass Health, and then they created with Obamacare, um, which I don't know what they call, now. Go to the government website and see what you're eligible for. So if I'm scared and I'm projecting in my head, this is an ADD thing, probably helps people with autism. I project because this is my negative past experience. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. Bureaucracies suck. I'm going to be in hold for 20 minutes. I'm finally going to get a human. They're going to put me to another department. And this does happen. So, what you can do, and this helps with PDA as well,
What's
which
that?
what you were saying, demand avoidance.
Oh, uh-huh.
So the technical name for it is pathological demand avoidance.
Mm,
If you want, I don't know how to add like words. If later on you want to edit this and put like little things,
okay.
so they are now trying to positively change it to persistent. So it's PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which is a terrible name, but it's this neurological thing that happens with autistic people. Some autistic people have it. It's like this knee-jerk reaction. So in my case, it's even stuff I put on my goals, my things to do list. So
I
the
know
night
it.
before, when I'm planning and I'm the one in control and choosing, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna bang this list out in the morning, and then I'm gonna be able to do XYZ. And then I wake up and I see it, and I didn't think of it just then. It's like my own list of things to do, and I do tough love on myself, which I'm learning you're not supposed to do.
Oh
I'm
boy.
just do
Yeah.
it, and that triggers it
So
more.
this is my experience of that same situation. I've got the list, right? And I'm like,
Mhm,
okay, number one, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to tackle number one. And number one is going to require like some steps. I sit down to do it,
mhm.
blank, blank. Can't
ADHD.
figure out what to like, okay, what now? Now,
See,
if I was telling someone else what to do and I've tried to like turn it around and be like,
mhm.
pretend that someone else needs to do
That's
this
a
and you're
good
helping them
that's
get
a
it
good
done,
idea.
still it doesn't work.
Do you want me to explain the blankness? I actually know what it is.
Yes.
It
Yes.
sucks. I'm gonna explain it from the ADHD perspective because this is something I know, unfortunately. Your frontal lobes I recently learned that with ADHD, and I can't wait to learn about all the biology, the different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and be a neurologist. I'm not going to go and get like a psychology degree, but and this is going to seem a little bit rambly to get there, but this is helpful. And I want to bring these things that I recently learned from a group that I was involved with. It was like a class, it was a 6-week class. And each week was broken down into the aspects that affect ADHD, right? So the first week, we learned the biology. We learned what biological parts of our brain are affected with the symptoms. So we learn why and how it happens. No, it's not going to change that you have it, but knowing it's a biological process and learning your system, which is different than somebody else's, and why yours shuts off helps you to not compare yourself to everyone else because their operating system, they're just like, they got it. Ours
Yeah.
shuts down at certain things, and stress and anxiety do it. So if I'm sitting at my vanity table and I'm getting ready for work and I'm late again and my anxiety starts to raise, you can see this in brain scans. It's fascinating and debilitating. Have you heard of Daniel Amen? He is a brain doctor, neurologist. I don't remember what his exact title was, but he went to medical school inspired by the people in his family who have ADHD. And he thought to himself, he's been on PBS, he has tons of books. He actually has products now. So some people will say, "Oh, don't listen to him. He's selling his products." Well, he that's more recent. I think that a lot of ADHD folks went to him and say, "Just tell me what to take, make it so I don't have to buy ton supplements." That makes sense to me. But he has a brain center, and I think it's in Florida, and he treats people, the NFL players who have the is it CTE, chronic traumatic encephalitis, or and I forget the actual word, but encephal has to do with the brain from concussions, right?
Right. Right.
So all those NFL football players who have multiple concussions, your brain is an organ. He wanted to go to school because he saw all of these things, whether it's concussions or ADHD, and he thought, why is nobody looking at ADHD from a doctor standpoint? We look at, you know, any other condition as a biological thing. So if somebody has diabetes, you're not going to say, "Hey, your blood sugar, you could regulate your blood sugar if you want to." Because no, we know biologically that person can't. And then also, that's a whole nother discussion. It depends if it's type 1 or 2 and all of that. That's actually kind of complicated. And I don't know if that's a good analogy, but you don't tell a colorblind. This is a good analogy. My brother was colorblind. He's passed when I was younger, but he had that green red color blindness. And my grandmother was an oil painter. And she would get so frustrated that he would use the wrong color because nobody knew he was colorblind. And then, you're a kid and you do those tests where you see the numbers, and then they found out that he's colorblind. You wouldn't tell him that he could see red or green if he wanted to.
If he just tried harder.
Right. But people don't know that, and this is what I would love to study. I would love to find out more information because this really needs to get out there because bosses, teachers, parents, caregivers, uh, all know what we haven't, like us, we know more now because we had to dig it up to learn how to deal with our
Yeah.
own brain, right? But does these brain scans, and one book that I had from him, which is kind of like a not a good name, it's called Curing ADHD, which you really
Mm.
can't. But I think what he was talking about in this book is different ways that you can do to treat it. But he's looking at it from a medical standpoint. So if he takes a brain scan of a neurotypical person and takes a brain scan of an ADHD person, and you're looking at the different parts of your brain and they have them do an activity. And the brain are working now, turn on to do said task or to pay attention or feel or whatever the thing you're trying to get them to do, they will light up. Now we know that this part of your brain,
Yeah.
the frontal lobes, which are affected by ADHD, they deal with impulse control, personality, also executive
Yeah.
function, which you're prioritizing, planning, long-term goals, all that stuff. That's here, right? So if you're doing a regular task, there's a regular thing, and you have both the neurotypical and the neurodivergent person do it, they both light up. Now, when you introduce stress or whatever, you're showing the person who is really having a hard time concentrating, the ADHD person and the neurotypical person, and you look at the brain scans, not only is this less blood flow, which it already had, but it stops. It shuts down. It's almost like a mousetrap. So I don't know exactly how
Mm.
it works, but something about the anxiety or the stress, your emotions, your emotional regulation will trigger it just shutting off. And I've literally had that happen while I was going to work. I had it happen a couple months ago. I legit ended up having a full on anxiety attack because it ended up spiraling. And
That sounds okay. So I'm going to take you to the autistic meltdown. Now, we've heard in the past few years these terms thrown around that were clinical terms as it relates to autistics, and that's trigger and meltdown. They're clinical terms. A
Mhm.
trigger is something that is like, the scales, okay? The trigger is something that tips the scales for someone, and they're different for everybody. It could be the sound of
Mhm.
someone breathing or the sound of tapping or any the
Oh
sound
my
of
God.
styrofoam or the feeling of a tag in your shirt, whatever. And
Happened to
it
me
tips
the
the
other day.
scales and tips the scales. As soon as you get so many of these triggers, it triggers a meltdown, which is a neurological
Mhm.
fight or flight, actually fight, flight, or freeze at this point. It
I had to go
sounds
downstairs.
like, huh? You gotta get off
Yeah,
soon?
I had that happen the other
Okay.
day.
Well, it's a
Um,
trigger, a fight, flight, or freeze, and it sounds to me like that stress of the demand avoidance triggers a mini meltdown. Like "Burp." It's putting us in a fight, flight, or freeze where the
it's
blood
a
is
little
diverted from the frontal lobe to the other parts of the brain
I
to
think it's a
save our
little bit
lives,
I see the similarities, but I
right?
think it's a little bit different. Um, for me, this isn't that kind of stress when I have that happen where my brain shuts off and I can't think straight. And I've had the meltdowns as well. I haven't had as many. I think maybe I shove it inside and I try to shut myself off and it's not healthy. But it's not that same level of stress. And what ended up happening in that situation where I was getting ready for work and my brain shut off, I got mad. I wasn't having the reactivity. I wasn't having the sensitivity. It was completely different. I was mad because I didn't have control because my brain shut off and that was not okay with me. My inner self is a bully. I'm like, this is bullshit.
Mm.
Go get your stuff. Go get your stuff. And so I'm trying to talk myself through it, but because this shut off, I'm just staring at the mirror like, I can't believe this is happening. I'm already late. And the emotional reaction was just it spiraled. And I did talk in this group that I was talking to you about. They had 15 spaces or 15 people altogether that had ADHD. This is through my health insurance. Do we have anybody here still? I know that we didn't.
There's 2 people on right this second, but yeah.
If anybody has ADHD, if you are in counseling or even if you're going to see your primary care sometime soon, ask if your health insurance or the counselors that you go to, ask if they have an ADHD group. It This particular one where I live, this woman who runs it, she started it on her own because she used to work with children with ADHD and she realized there weren't a lot of resources for adults to understand what was going on. So she started it. And for me, I have wanted to go for years, but the place it was only held in one place that was like an hour commute. So I was like, yeah, I can't do that. And so I know my lateness. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. Yeah, I'm not going to even
Yeah.
set myself up for that. But now since telehealth, I was able to do it. And then
Oh,
they
that's
switched
great.
on Zoom. So perfect. And there were 15. So I don't know. I don't think they do this everywhere, but it would be really great for people to develop. And she had like a little outline for each week. And anyway, I got off topic, but one of the people, let me go back. I'm like, doo, 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 tracing my thought. We were talking about the shutdown of your brain for ADHD
Yeah.
when this shuts off. I literally have to wait until I calm down because it's the emotion that shuts it off. And if you're already mad, that's what spiraled me. But there was this young man who was in the group, and he was having one of those days, and he missed half of the meeting. And we're all cool with that because we're like, there's no rule to be there. It was, you're on a waiting list to go. It wasn't, it was like a combination of like school, like a class. And it was a little bit like a self-help group. I mean, a support group, but not what you would think of. Um, but yeah, I had got to talk to him, and he was having one of those days. And I said, hey, when you spiral, how do you stop it? Because when you get like all of a sudden all your emotions are triggered because you're like, oh my God, it's happened again. It's a different thing that's coming from within me versus like 2 days ago. Was it yes? What day is it? I'm losing track of days.
Saturday.
Friday. Friday, my fiance was home. He's not usually home. He's going to be working over the weekend. So this was the day I decided, okay, I've been procrastinating these things I have to do. I'm going to study today. This is something I have to do online. And he was home, and he's like, yep, I'm going to mop. And then he turned on the dishwasher, which was crazy loud, which triggers me. I do have some of the sensitivities. So that's what I'm learning about. So I'm like, can I be autistic? Because I'm now learning, they're learning now that people with ADHD have some of the same symptoms, can have, because they're all different from each other, right?
Right.
Every ADHD person's different, but you can have sensitivities just like if
Right.
you have autism. And so I don't know. They might just have ADHD, but have a lot in common with people. So
It's kind of
it's
like the
like
Venn diagram thing. There's a lot of overlap.
yes, and that's what is in that video that I'm gonna find for you, that PBS.
Okay.
It shows them, and oh, and on the class that I took, they had OCD, ADHD, autism, and they were overlapping. And where they overlapped with the symptoms for both ADHD and autism were some of the sensitivities. And I have
Mhm.
the story, and
I
I
did
have
hear it said that lots of autistic people also have ADHD,
yeah.
but ADHD doesn't have autism. I don't know. Does that make logical sense to you? It seems like
I think that they are just learning this now. This is new. This is
if
new just
you
in the
if you
last
have
4 years.
both, they consider you autistic with ADHD. If
Basically,
you
the
are just ADHD, they won't be looking for like a subcategory of autism. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I take that.
up until recently, they really thought they were 2 separate things.
Yeah, they're changing the DSM all the time, every time, like every
This is what we want, because before they weren't doing that at all, and if they didn't do that at all, they would continue to think that autism is just for boys, and you're a woman and you can talk and you can go to work and you can have friends. Yeah, you can't have
How
that.
much are they consulting with us though? They need to consult with us about, does this description accurately describe, because it describes what a neurotypical doctor might see and how they perceive it, but they cannot attribute, like they could say appears to lack empathy, but
You
saying
know,
we lack empathy is a whole other thing.
well, I don't know if you can do that. Well, one, I will we are you and I and everyone, we're speculating because I actually don't know who, like, what medical groups, what universities are doing these studies. I know about the history of them learning about these things like ADHD and autism and how they did in the 50s. I don't know, I haven't educated myself on how they've been learning these things now. So I don't know enough to have any thoughts about that yet. So I don't know if any of them are neurodivergent or not, or if that even has to do with it. I
Probably a
have a
lot of them are and
feeling
don't know it.
maybe. But I think a lot of the things that happened with how they looked at it in the past and how they were limited was if you go back to the 50s, the medical establishment, and this I learned about in school. So with my school, and I have another medical type of degree before this. So um, the way the medical establishment was, if you go to the 50s when my mom was young, right? The medical system and culturally and medically was completely different. There was no individual consent. The culture was different. When the doctor gave you your recommendations to treat XYZ, they were actually doctor's orders. Do you remember the term doctor's orders?
Mm.
They were considered an expert and you did what they said. You deferred to them. So it's only just like the recent decades where the whole medical establishment in our culture has changed that the patient is involved and we're kind of
I
like
know
more.
why that is. I know why that is. Okay. Because I remember probably just like you do. Remember, there used to be cigarette ads, no more cigarette ads on TV. There
Yeah,
used to be
that's a
alcohol,
whole
like beer, where you could see people drinking beer. Now you can have an alcohol ad, but you can't show people drinking. Okay. They changed that. But guess what you can do? Lots and lots and lots of medical pharma. Ask your doctor about this. Now, if someone self diagnoses and says, I need this med, and their doctor doesn't want to give it to them, they find a different doctor who will. That, I think, was the major shift, plus Google, people Googling and
I
learning about
will
their own stuff. I
I
think
will
that may be
find
part of it.
I'll dig up my old books and notes because they actually, when they were teaching us about that and the history of the medical establishment, they gave us a lot of information as to how and why it's evolved.
I'd like
I
to know.
Yeah, I'm like a little afraid to go into that shed, and that's for another conversation because it is scary. It is scary,
Spiders.
scary, scary. No, this is the ADHD mess scary. This is the doom piles, doom boxes. Have you ever heard of body doubling? Has anybody here heard of body doubling? Is anybody still here that is watching us? Does anybody have ADHD and struggle with messes or initiating tasks? Have you ever heard of doing this thing called body doubling to help you initiate tasks that actually trigger your anxiety? And for ADHD, a lot of times it's our piles of stuff. It's the mess. We have a disorganized mind, so we have a disorganized place, right?
See, that's where I'm very different because I have to have my stuff organized. If I
That's
can't find stuff in the dark, I'm
Mhm.
freaked out. Now, when I had kids, I had to relax a lot because your kids move your stuff around, never put it back. And so I had to chill out. But I went super minimal because I need my things to be absolutely organized and in their place. Like,
I need them that way.
but you don't do it.
I'm not able to do it because I don't know, the little ADHD gremlin in my brain makes it so I cannot be organized. Now, I was at one point, and I was actually my counselor's awesome, by the way. I'm not gonna give her information away, and I'm not gonna say
Does
anything
she do telehealth? I want one.
does, but I don't know if she does anything outside of Massachusetts, but she disclosed to me earlier on in my treatment that she has ADHD as well, which I was surprised that she actually disclosed it to me because usually they have a reason why. You know how, like, sometimes when you try different counselors before you find one for you, if you've gone to counseling, sometimes they just feel very distant. They're not sharing things about themselves, like us,
Hmm.
especially neurodivergent. That's how we relate to people. As soon as somebody tells us something, we go, "Oh yeah, well I had that happen," So we don't get that from them, and it almost like dehumanizes them. They seem like a robot. They're not sharing personal
Hmm.
stuff with us. but there's a reason for that. So when they become trained to be a counselor or psychiatrist or psychologist, they need to make the meeting about the patient.
Right.
And another reason they don't share personal things about them is it may disrupt the balance of like power and keeping things professional.
Right. Right.
Don't want to get too personal with your counselor, you're like your buddies, because then that messes up you respecting their expertise. You might just think of them as your friend and they're not listening. So I mean, there's other reasons,
Right.
but for her to disclose that to me, I found uh, I was very grateful for that because I understand and I respect why they.
It's really no different from a woman wanting a woman doctor.
Yeah, but they have a choice whether or not they want it. Like, if you look at ADHD and autism are neurodevelopmental disabilities, and they are protected. I know that ADHD is, and I'm assuming that autism is. Correct me if I'm wrong if you go to find out. ADHD, by the way, is an incorrect name for it, but do you know why they cannot change the name?
Why?
Because they have legally fought, you know, disability lawyers, disability supports have fought for us to have rights for protection as a disability under the Americans with Disability Act and other protections, and they fought very hard. And we have them now. So if they go, this is what I've heard. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but lawyers and the law deals with the nitty-gritty, the things we don't care
Mm, mm.
we don't care about the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But with legal documents, you just change a word, change a little thing. Hey, somebody else will use that as a loophole. So they haven't messed with it. So they used to think of it as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder, which now they call inattentive ADHD,
Okay.
hyperactive. So what used to be called ADD, which is what I have, is called inattentive ADHD. It's like the H is silent. But it's just the name. They just changed the name. And then there's the combined type. Maybe that's why they changed it instead of two labels. Because some people have both. Some people have the I'm
Mm.
gonna space out for part of the day, and then maybe they're like bouncing off the walls. So
Well,
I
and the
really,
hyperactivity, I think, can be internal and invisible,
yeah, and
right?
that's what the that's what my kind is. So and it's funny, it's crazy as I'm learning just this year about these other symptoms that I had no idea were connected to ADHD, and I thought were like
Yeah.
cute little quirks or just things that were weird that I didn't want to tell people about. I had no idea they were tied to my sensitivities. I had no idea they were tied, and it was actually kind of depressing because I'm like, I thought I was being cute, and I was talking to my fiance. I'm like, baby, I thought this made me different, and it's my ADHD.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I've had that happen too. It's like someone pointed some things out to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, and sometimes it does. It hits me, and it's like, right, of course, of course. I have to let you know, I have 8% left on my phone, and I can't. And we're good,
and you take
seven
it off
percent
the
now,
phone.
and I
Mhm,
can't take my headphones out and plug in. So
mhm.
in a couple minutes, we're going to wrap this up because we've been
No
on for
problem.
88 minutes, and we
I
are going
can't
to do
believe
this
it.
again.
This is fun. Do you wanna do it on a specific day each week? Give it some thought.
If you can
I
head
know
up a
that
schedule, that's really hard for me, but
I
we will
can't
definitely
wait.
work that out. Now we've got each other's numbers and we can help. Oh, look at you. We can help
Can't wait.
coordinate that. But I just want to make sure that I don't just drop off and you don't know what's happening or whatever. So maybe this is a good time
I
to
hope
wrap it up. I'm loving the people came on and watched. I'm loving that, you and I communicate easily and keep this
good.
thing rolling, which is fantastic. I love your research. We both have that same kind of mind. I read medical journals. I'm constantly
Yeah.
researching about all different types of physical and neurological, psychological.
This has to help people.
It
Why?
does. If
Because
you write in the comments, it
I'm
absolutely
so
is.
tired of trying to figure this out by myself and have to go through all of the work, researching things, watching some YouTube things here, looking things up, talking to my counselor going, is this part of what I have? Like, if and because it's so different for every ADHD person in my group, some things were the same, but we were each different in what helped us, in what we struggled with,
Right.
and also the severity. And the same thing with autistic people. If I went through all this freaking work that took years to get to where I am now, and I found a few things that helped me, there has to be somebody else out there. And if I can save them from that torture, which let me tell you something, if you have ADHD, looking up things online and doing homework is the last thing you want to do. What you want to do as soon as you start doing that, which it becomes painful, like trying to focus, make yourself focus on something that's not interesting, you will immediately
Yeah.
go hyperfixation, sugar, yarn. Like for me, it's crochet or whatever
Oh,
things
great.
you're
Yeah.
all about. You'd be like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So maybe this will help. I'm sorry, I keep shaking my camera.
Oh, no, me too. I'm like bouncing around on my couch. And not only that, so I've gotten to a place now where yes, I want to share, I want to help, but now I'm at a place after I made my short where I'm like, I hate autistic content. I hate watching it. I hate making it. I'm not doing it. Well,
You're
now I'm
going,
at a place where I'm like, okay, I think I found my creators and I think, and this is helping me. Sitting here talking to you today is better than therapy for me. Connecting with people who are like me is the therapy.
yeah, and you can do both, and maybe you'll do one at certain points and something else in other points. And one thing that really helped me, one simple thing that my counselor gave me that really helped me, and I will find it and send it to you. I might have to be reminded. Oh, and the
Okay.
grid. There's a grid that helps you prioritize. I'll send to you. Is this? I know you got to go. There is this motivation curve, and it might be the same for autistic people, I don't know, but it's for especially ADHD people. You start something new and you're like, "Yes, this is great." Novelty increases dopamine. We lack the right amount of dopamine. Our dopamine's lower than other people, so it doesn't function so well, and we can't think. So now we're doing something novel and fun. "Ooh, cool, I'm gonna try this new thing." And then you do great for a few days, whatever method you devised, and then all of a sudden it's not new and fun anymore, and now you don't have the dopamine, and now it's suddenly hard, and you're like, "Yeah, I don't wanna do this." And then that is the same with, I would guess, with people in general, but maybe not to that extreme. So you're going through this journey with your autism, wherever you are, learning about that or sharing about that. So in some points, it's all new, and you're just like, yes, I'm going to share all of this stuff. So it makes sense that after a while, you're going to need a break from that. You're going to be like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I want to go just do the thing that I love to do. And maybe you need to take a break from that, and that's okay. And then after a while, maybe you'll have some new thoughts. Maybe you want to,
Yeah.
and so it's
It was
really up to
triggering for
you.
me because it was just like, I don't like talking about my feelings and
Oh,
emotions because it requires me so much effort. I can't explain it. Like, I was driving down the street the other day in a very tree lined neighborhood, which is hard to find here. And it brought back a flood of memories of like where I grew up in the Midwest, where it was just trees. And I became very emotional. And I'm like, what am
yeah.
I feeling? And I'm like, I want to be around people I know. What is
Mm,
that feeling? Well, that's loneliness or that's nostalgic. I
mhm.
I can describe to you how it feels. I want to be around people I know. What is that feeling? I don't know. And so
You'll
to
find,
try to
yeah.
like go through and label things is it was really triggering me. But
Mm,
now I've kind of found where and how to do it where that's not happening. I do have
yeah,
some lifelong special interests, and they're consistent and constant.
yeah.
I did pick up knitting. I learned how to
Mhm.
do it, and I'm like, okay, okay, I learned how to do it. I get that I can do it, but honestly, it's a waste
If
of
you
time because
don't,
I can just go buy socks. But if the
yeah, if
world
you don't want to,
collapses and I need to knit, now I know I can do it. So I
right.
accomplished my goal,
It might
and I'm
be
like, but it's a
something else,
waste of my time.
right.
I would have loved to sat there for the rest of my life and knitted, but I'm like, this is actually a waste of my time.
Yeah. And I
Anyway, I've
can't
got
knit.
it's fun. I love
Okay.
it. I've got 3% left, so we should just kind of cut it here.
Is there
Um,
anybody even on anymore? If you
yeah,
are, you
there's
guys
one, there is
deserve a
someone listening. It's
medal.
probably the busy octopus listening. So let's do something again. We'll see if we can actually make a plan and a schedule. I'm not horrible at that.
Woo!
I just arrive a day early. I'm always on time at the right
Mhm.
time and place, but, like, literally one day early, and then I'm like, "Oh, well, okay, I'll see you tomorrow."
I have the opposite problem, so you might help me out because I can't be on time to save my life.
So, you're a joy, Sherry.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you so, so much. I'm glad we connected last night, and to
Can
everyone
I
who
ask you one
came
question?
on.
Can I
Yeah,
ask you
yeah.
one question? I would love if anybody is still here, come to my page and let me know in comments anywhere. I'm still learning about YouTube. I'm older and I'm sorry I'm so green. Tell me what things you want me to talk about. If the anything about ADHD that you're interested in learning more of, you want tricks on how to deal with certain issues that are hard for you, let me know what you want, and I can spend time doing that because I wanna be as helpful as I can to people with what I do know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually do think that you're going to continue your education to place yourself where you can actually clinically help people. I just feel that for you.
Okay.
We'll see. You're so, so passionate about the research and the knowledge that
Yeah.
why not, So I've got
I'm gonna
2%
stay with
left. I
it.
love you. And we'll see everyone. Go to Sherry's
Thank you.
page, the Lady Phoenix, right? Lady Phoenix.
Until I
And,
come up with a good name, if you think I should come up with a different name for my channel, I have no idea.
you'll be able just to click right on her
Mhm,
in the description probably. And
mhm.
that's it. Subscribe to her channel and we love you.
Thank you.
And we're
And
out. Yeah.
okay, bye.
Bye, honey.
Right. How do I turn it off?